before reassembly, we're going to clean this rusted part of this, the ridges on the edge of this here, clean it up and lube it. Again, try to keep it on the parking brake cable because if it does slip off, you're going to go through a little difficulty getting that back on there again. So we get that cleaned up. We're also going to clean up and put some lube on, some high temperature grease on these points here where the brake shoes, a seat on the back plate here. A reassembly is exactly the reverse of disassembly. So for starters, we're going to put in the trailing shoe first. Not to worry too much if this stays put, this lever, because it'll come back in on the later stage. So we have our pin, putting that through the backing plate, through the corresponding hole on the shoe. The shoe, of course, fitting behind here. Next comes the spring, and then the spring cap. It's a good idea to face this up 90 degrees, or whatever angle, so you just put the cap in the same way. And this cap reassembly, best done without a tool, I find. You know, unless you can't seem to get a hold of it. Once you've got it at 90 degrees, from where the slot is in the cap, it's in there. Okay, the next part that's going back in is this lower lever. Okay, remember that's going around both the lever that fits on the parking brake, on the cable, and the shoe. This thing is symmetrical, same in both directions. There it goes. It's a tight fit. I think that's called a strut. The next piece that goes back in is the adjuster. When you're putting this back in, and bear in mind this part here where there's a notch in it, when the spring, the lever goes into that, that faces up, and when you put it in, it'll rotate like that. So, seat it over here, and it's facing up. Okay, at this point we have to transfer on the leading shoe this plate. See this plate back here? This is the back side of it. So get your replacement shoe ready and take out the three parts and then reassemble it. There's the E-clip, there's a little bushing, and then there's the plate itself. So we'll just have to remove this E-clip. Which is on there pretty good. There it comes. Just a clip. Now let's tap it off. Again, I'm going to wire brush and lube this a little bit here, both parts. I think they are supposed to have a little bit of flexibility to turn. Alright, we've cleaned up these parts, brushed them a little bit with a wire brush, and file, lubed them up so they fit back together better. It's supposed to fit in there, not have to be beat out. And put this piece back in. Now it's like we do have to tap this in a little bit yet. There, no problem. Okay, and there's just the clip. Yeah, see how freely this turns in here? You noticed before it was all pretty well seized up. Here's a properly reassembled shoe, and I moved and installed this plate that goes underneath. This can go in a couple of different ways, so be careful with it. Got to have this hole in the bottom for the spring, and of course you have to hold the whole line up here for the backplate pin. Okay, when you've got that all back together, you can seat it in here. So the next step then is to get your new hardware out again. And there's our pin and our spring. Once again, we'll seat this straight up and down so we have a chance to get it in there very easily. There. And there it is, right at 90 degrees. Before putting this the springs back on, I like to just stabilize the shoes using this piece of nylon strapping. Pull everything tight. I just find it makes it easier to seat these springs, which can be rather difficult. Okay, here we go. This is always the fun part here. This spring right here, this upper return spring, is under the most tension. It's requiring this tool. And I had most no luck trying to put this spring on with anything else. And even with this tool, it's not a given that it's going to be quick. I'm using this nylon a little bit. There. Now that wasn't too bad. I've tried this with a number of different tools. This particular type of spring clamp, or pliers, brake spring pliers, works the best I find. And of course there's this little hook here that needs to go into place as well. It just runs up from this this little clip from one side of the brake adjuster up over the spring. There, it's in place. Next up is the lever, the brake return lever. It also fits in a slot down here. There's this little slot cut out, a little tab that fits in there. And then the spring goes, well, it's the smaller one and relatively easy to put on. One end goes in the hole down here. The other end is going to go up over the clip. And this is a good job for a vice grip pliers. Alright, there we go. That's the way it's supposed to be. Okay, 2 more springs. Again, this is a good job for a vice grip pliers. Just get a good grip on it. Pull it across. There it is. Okay, now we can take this off because this is actually in the way of putting Shorty in. Final spring. Final spring's another vice grip style spring. Going across the bottom. And seating right in. Okay. Let's go closer to this end. That did it. There it is. All the return springs are in there. It's fully reassembled. And so we'll be putting the drum back on next. Okay, this replacement brake drum doesn't look like it has any residue on it. I'm going to go over it lightly just with a little lacquer thinner on a rag and then install it. Okay, looks like we're going to have to turn the adjuster out, but this is actually quite the excellent time to do that. So the adjuster, well, because now we can just move this lever like this, and then get in there. Shorten it up so that it'll fit these new, of course, much wider pads. One thing I'm going to do that I should have done when I had it out is put a little grease on the threads on there so that it'll turn more freely. Okay, what I've done here is I've jammed a little pin in there so I can turn this wheel. It needs to come in quite a bit. And to me, this is a far better way to adjust it than having to do it from the back plate. Okay, right now I've got it all the way loose. So I would expect right here to be able to seat this on here with it completely loose. At that point you can take your nail out. So what we're going to have to do now is turn it back the other way. But we can take it on and off easily until we get it to actually make light contact. But now you don't need to do, it's going to go in the other direction, obviously. And that pin and that lever does not really come into play in this direction. So now we're going back out the other direction. And it's just going to be a process doing this a few times until we get it to where it's just off a very light drag of the shoe on the drum. Okay, now we went a little bit too far. I'm unable to get the drum off at all. So we're going to come back just a little bit more this way. Okay, we got to come off a little bit more. Still too tight. Okay, that's pretty good right there. Okay, so we've got this wheel back on, and now we've got some free movement. Remember, this one was locked up. Okay, so now what we want to do is set the brake a few times. A couple of cycles. And this gets the automatic adjuster reset. Okay, this one is on. Hi, I'm David. So we finished work on this 2000 Caravan on the rear brakes. The problem showed up as a completely seized brake mechanism for the parking brake, and found parts rusted inside that weren't moving freely. And while we were in there, though, we noticed that there's just a lot of wear. They've been neglected, I'll admit it. So we did a complete overhaul. And now we're just going to set it back down on the ground and torque the lug nuts evenly to 100 foot-pounds, and we'll be rolling again with this thing for a while anyway. Well, thanks for watching this video.